Okay, let's unpack this. We're all familiar with pain, right? The kind that, comes from a cut or a bruise, maybe, or even just the sting of someone being unkind, a stranger. But what about that other kind of pain? The deeper stuff, the ache, that it often comes really unexpectedly, not from outside, but from people really close to us, people we trusted, maybe still trust, even when it hurts. A friend, maybe a partner, could be a parent, someone who used to feel like home, but now interacting with them just leaves this kind of constant unease inside. The material we're looking at today, it really cuts right to the heart of that. It talks about how insidious this kind of pain can be. It makes a really strong point that toxic relationships, they aren't always the loud, dramatic ones. They don't always involve shouting or obvious fights. Sometimes they're much quieter, more subtle, like a slow erosion of your spirit almost. The source mentions guilt instead of bruises, silent manipulation instead of screams. Think about that. Like maybe you feel gently pushed into agreeing to something you don't want to. Or you feel like you have to manage someone else's moods, but you don't even know why it's your job. That's the kind of insidious thing we mean. And because it is so subtle, well, that's exactly why it's so damn hard to spot sometimes and even harder to get out of. And this is where it gets really interesting, I think, because it challenges how we usually think about what harm even looks like in a relationship.
It really does. And what's so crucial, I think, is how the source immediately tackles that big misconception. It shifts the focus, right, away from just the obvious aggression and onto these more covert tactics that honestly can cause just as much damage, sometimes even more profound damage. It tells us straight up, the worst toxicity often works underneath the surface. It uses tools like guilt that just hangs in the air, or subtle pressure, or that silent manipulation we mentioned, not necessarily physical threats or shouting. And we're not just talking about disagreements here or someone having a bad day. It's more systematic than that. It's about undermining your independence, your self-worth, often slowly over time. When we talk about silent manipulation, we could be touching on things like coercive control, where someone systematically chips away at your freedom, your independence, or even gaslighting, which is a term people hear a lot now. But that specific thing where someone makes you question your own memory, your perception, even your sanity. These aren't just one-off incidents, are they? They become woven into the relationship's fabric. They create this constant fog of confusion and self-doubt. So it really begs the question, a really important one. How do we start to see something that operates in the shadows like that? Something that doesn't have those big, obvious alarm bells ringing. So our mission today, really, is to dig into those nuanced signs, try to understand why these relationships can feel so sticky, so hard to leave, and most importantly, offer some real insights for healing, for reclaiming yourself. And just to be clear, this isn't about blaming people. It's about seeing patterns, recognizing what's destructive, and ultimately empowering you, the listener, to put your own well-being first, to find some real peace.
Yeah, that distinction is key, isn't it? Moving past the obvious to see the unseen damage. So let's dig into that, the covert nature of it all. Because it really is about recognizing those invisible wounds. The kind of harm that, it doesn't leave a physical mark, but it scars you deeper, maybe, on the inside. It's not just what you see them do or what they say, it's about what you feel, consistently, deep down. After you're with them, the source talks about these subtle signs, these ways toxicity shows up, like feeling constantly drained. You know that feeling. Maybe you had a good day, you felt okay, even energetic. Then you talk to this person or spend an hour with them, and afterwards, boom, utterly wiped out. Not like physically tired from running a marathon, but just empty. Emotionally, mentally, like your battery's just been sucked dry, even if the conversation seemed fine on the surface. Or what about this one? Feeling like you're always wrong, always. Like you're always the one who misunderstood or messed up or needs to say sorry. Even when logically you look back and think, wait, that wasn't actually my fault. It's that creeping feeling that your own judgment is off, that your feelings don't count, that you're just fundamentally flawed somehow. It becomes this background noise, this low hum of self-doubt that starts to seep into everything. And you feel yourself kind of shrinking, don't you? Until you almost don't recognize yourself anymore.
And that's exactly where the subtlety does its damage. These aren't just, bad moods that pass, or simple misunderstandings. The source really stresses that these are persistent states. You might actually find yourself, physically shrinking, making yourself smaller, less noticeable when they're around, maybe trying to avoid saying the wrong thing, or just trying to minimize their reaction to you. You start replaying conversations, right, over and over in your head. Did I say that wrong? Should I have done this differently? Constantly second-guessing. And the apologizing. You might apologize for things that are clearly, objectively not your fault, just to keep the peace, just to smooth things over, avoid an argument, or, manage their unpredictable emotions. So these subtle feelings, the draining, the feeling wrong, the shrinking back, the saying sorry for everything, that constant hypervigilance, they're huge signals. Like the source says, really powerfully, that's not love, that's not respect, that's toxicity. And the cumulative effect of all these little interactions, it's massive over time. They chip away bit by bit at your self-perception. They erode your self-worth, your confidence, your mental health, until you really do feel like a shadow of your former self. It's like psychological corrosion, quietly wearing down your resilience. And that constant stress, it can show up physically too. You might feel chronically tired, anxious, have stomach problems, because your nervous system is basically stuck in fight or flight mode around them.
That's a really unsettling image, that quiet corrosion. And it brings us to something else the source brings up, which is, well, it's tricky. It's this idea of broken versus evil. It says, toxic people are not always evil. Sometimes they're just broken, carrying their own unhealed wounds and projecting them onto others. This makes it so complicated for us, doesn't it? Because, I mean, it's human nature to want to understand, to make excuses even for people we care about. We tell ourselves, oh, they're just stressed, or they had a really rough childhood, or, the classic one, hurt people hurt people. It's how we try to make sense of it when someone we love is causing us pain. We want there to be a reason, right? We want to believe they don't actually mean it, because the alternative, that someone we care about is consistently, maybe even intentionally harming us, that's just incredibly painful to face. It puts you in a really tough spot.
Oh, absolutely. It creates this huge cognitive dissonance. Yeah. Right? Trying to hold both ideas in your head. I care about this person, and this person is hurting me. And yes, it's natural to want to understand, to offer compassion, especially if there's love or history there. We build narratives to make sense of their actions. But, and this is a really critical point the source makes, while understanding their pain gives context, their pain doesn't excuse their behavior. That distinction is vital. It can save you so much heartache down the line. We can have empathy. We can see, oh, maybe they act this way because of their own trauma, their upbringing, their own struggles. Maybe they have insecure attachment issues or narcissistic traits or difficulty regulating emotions because of something like borderline personality traits. We can acknowledge that. But that empathy doesn't mean we have to accept harmful behavior. It doesn't mean we have to endure ongoing toxicity. The key insight here is so empowering. Hurt people may hurt people, but healed people protect themselves. This isn't about being callous or shutting down your empathy. It's about recognizing your own responsibility. Your responsibility to protect your well-being. It's about self-preservation, regardless of their internal battles. So you have to draw a line, don't you, between understanding why they might be hurting you and accepting the hurt itself. Enabling it even. It forces you to ask, where does my responsibility for their pain end and my responsibility for my own safety and peace begin? Their past might explain their present actions, sure. But it doesn't justify those actions if they're causing you real harm now.
That is such a powerful line to draw, and it helps us move towards, okay, how do we actually see these patterns? Decode the red flags, especially if they're subtle, because if it's operating under the surface, how do you get clarity? The source actually gives us some really practical questions, almost like a checklist. It says, look for repetitive behaviors. Okay, so ask yourself honestly, do you feel small around this person? Like, does being near them or their words somehow diminish you, make you feel less smart, less capable, less worthy? Do you feel afraid to speak up, to say what you really think or what you need, or to set a boundary because you're scared of how they'll react? Scared of judgment, or maybe an explosion. And this one hits home for a lot of people. Do they take your energy, your time, your support, maybe even money, but they never really give back? Not in a meaningful, balanced way. These aren't just one-off bad days, are they? They're patterns. Persistent, unsettling patterns that help you see the bigger picture, help you tell the difference between just a rough patch and something genuinely toxic.
Exactly. And if the answer to those questions is a consistent yes, well, the source is pretty clear. That's a red flag. Let's break that down a bit. Feeling small. That tells you your presence, your voice, who you are, is being diminished. Right. It points to a power imbalance. Often it comes from their need for control. Maybe your confidence or your assertiveness feels threatening to them, so they subconsciously or consciously try to shrink you down. And the fear of speaking up, that's a direct hit on psychological safety. If you can't be your authentic self, share your real thoughts, your needs, your feelings, without fearing some kind of punishment, ridicule, or manipulation, well, that relationship isn't safe ground for growth or real connection. It just stifles you, and it can make you feel incredibly lonely, even when you're with them. And the take dynamic, that creates this huge imbalance. It's unsustainable. It's like a one-way street where you're constantly pouring out your resources, emotional energy, time, support, whatever, and getting nothing, or very little back to refill your own tank. Again, this isn't just about someone being a bit selfish now and then. It's a consistent pattern. It systematically drains one person, chipping away at their well-being, their resources, their sense of value, piece by piece. It sets up this dynamic where their needs always come first, and yours are, well, they're secondary, or just ignored completely. And that leaves you feeling exhausted, maybe resentful, but often still stuck in that loop of giving, hoping things will change.
And, speaking of those patterns, one of the sneakiest red flags the source points out is the deceptive apology. It asks, do they apologize just enough to keep you close but never truly change? Ugh. That's not about real remorse, is it? It's not about growth or fixing the problem. It feels more like a move, a tactic, to keep you from leaving, to keep things going their way. You might hear things like, I'm sorry you feel that way, which, let's be honest, isn't really an apology for what they did, is it? It subtly dismisses your feelings. Or maybe, I'm sorry, but you made me so angry, immediately shifting blame back to you. These apologies don't signal real change is coming. They're just a tool.
Well, absolutely. It's a classic example of subtle manipulation, and it's incredibly effective at keeping people stuck in really unhealthy cycles. These apologies, they aren't coming from a place of genuine regret or any real commitment to doing things differently. No, they're a tactic, pure and simple, a way to smooth things over right now, to stop you from pulling away, maybe stop you from setting that boundary you were just about to set. And ultimately, yeah, it keeps them in control. The toxic person offers just enough performance of sorrow, just enough seeming regret to get you to lower your guard again, to make you think, okay, maybe this time they get it. Maybe things will change.
Yeah.
This creates something psychologists call intermittent reinforcement. You get these little crumbs of positive behavior, the apology, maybe a brief, nice moment mixed in with all the negative stuff. And that unpredictable mix, it's incredibly powerful, keeps you hooked, always hoping for the next good moment, making it super hard to walk away. It's like being addicted to a slot machine, always hoping for the next small win. But the core problem, the actual harmful behavior, it never gets addressed, doesn't change.
Because these apologies usually lack the key ingredients of a real apology, right? Like acknowledging the specific harm they caused, expressing actual remorse, making a clear commitment to change their behavior, maybe offering to make amends. When those things are missing, the sorry is just hollow, it's empty. And it traps you in this awful loop. Hope, then disappointment, then hope again, then more disappointment. And each time it just erodes your trust a little more, it chips away at your self-worth. It's a very clever, very damaging way to keep someone tethered. Because every time you think about leaving, they reel you back in with that false promise. And you end up just exhausting yourself trying to fix a problem that, honestly, the other person has zero real intention of fixing.
It really is a trap. And that leads us right into maybe the toughest part of this whole thing, that weight of connection. Why is it so incredibly hard to walk away? Even when you see the signs, even when your gut is screaming that something is wrong, the source just nails it when it says it's not easy, especially when history, love, or family are involved.
Yeah.
You start that internal dialogue, don't you? Maybe it'll get better. Or remember the good times, the laughter you shared, the dreams you had together, those moments where things did feel good, or at least how you wish they could feel again. You hold on to that hope so tightly. So you try harder, you give more, you keep showing up, right? Even when they don't, even when they've shown you time after time they aren't going to meet you halfway. It's just this intense struggle, this constant back and forth in your own head and heart.
It absolutely is, and it's so important to recognize this struggle isn't weakness. Not at all. It's deeply human. We're wired for connection. Breaking those bonds, especially ones with deep roots, shared history, it can feel like literally tearing off a part of yourself. And what's really fascinating from a psychological perspective is how our own brains can work against us here. We fall into these cognitive traps, these biases, like the sunk cost fallacy. Ever heard of that? Is where you feel like you've already put in so much time, energy, love, tears, that walking away now would mean all that investment was wasted. So instead of cutting your losses, you actually double down. You cling even tighter. We also have this tendency to remember the good times more vividly, maybe through rose-tinted glasses, while we minimize or rationalize the bad stuff. That could be optimism bias, just really hoping things will get better. Or maybe it's just too painful to constantly dwell on the negative, so our brain tries to protect us in a way. And we often internalize the blame, don't we? If I just try harder, if I give more, if I find the right words, then maybe they'll change. We put the responsibility on ourselves.
Hope, in this situation, it really can become a trap. It keeps you stuck, dangling this possibility of a better future that just It never actually arrives. So it's not just about emotions. It's about these deep psychological patterns, these frameworks we build around relationships that make them incredibly hard to leave, even when leaving is clearly the healthiest choice. Sometimes it's even a trauma bond, where those intense emotional highs and lows actually create this really strong, almost addictive attachment that's incredibly difficult to break.
Wow, yeah, hearing it laid out like that, hope as a trap, the sunk cost fallacy, it makes so much sense why it's so hard. But then, right when you're feeling stuck in that complexity, the source gives us this really powerful permission slip, something we often forget we even need. It says, you are allowed to leave situations that make you feel unsafe, unseen, or unloved. That just hits hard, doesn't it? And then the crucial follow-up, even if the person loves you, even if you love them. Whoa, so it's not just about whether love exists in the equation. It's about something more fundamental.
Exactly. This is where we get to the core of what a healthy relationship truly requires. It's a deeper insight. The source spells it out. Because love without respect is not enough. Support without safety is not enough. Think about that. Respect, safety, psychological safety, mutual support. These aren't optional extras. They're non-negotiable foundations. The presence of love, however strong it feels, it simply cannot make up for the absence of these critical elements. Mature, healthy love should include safety. It should include respect. It should foster growth and autonomy for both people, not just affection mixed with fear or diminishment. So staying in a situation where you're consistently ignored or belittled or made to feel unsafe, even if you believe love is there, means you're constantly compromising your own fundamental well-being. You're living in the state of emotional self-sacrifice, really. And it forces us to ask that really tough question. What does love actually mean if it doesn't come with safety and respect? If it doesn't help you grow? Is it really honoring both people? Or has it become a one-sided burden? It's a call to redefine our own standards, maybe. To understand that genuine connection should add to our well-being, not subtract from it. And choosing your own peace isn't selfish. It's necessary. It's self-preservation.
And that really hammers home the next point. You deserve peace, not just connection, because we do settle sometimes, don't we, for this kind of twisted connection. Maybe it's intense, maybe it's dramatic, familiar even in its chaos, but it costs us our inner peace, our well-being. It's like having someone physically present, but feeling utterly alone inside, or constantly tense, waiting for the other shoe to drop, walking on eggshells. That's not peace. That's, like internal emotional warfare.
That's a great way to describe it. And that distinction between just having someone there and having genuine well-being is so critical. Real connection, the healthy kind, it should contribute to your peace, your sense of calm, your ability to just be. It should be a space where you feel secure, where you can be yourself, where you can grow without constantly looking over your shoulder or fearing judgment or attack. It shouldn't take away from your peace, leaving you anxious, drained, or hurting all the time. So the message here is really a powerful reminder to recalibrate. What should a healthy relationship actually feel like? What does it offer? And it's about recognizing your fundamental right to feel emotionally serene, calm, safe in your closest relationships. It's not demanding too much. It's acknowledging a basic human need. Peace isn't a luxury add-on in a relationship. It's foundational. If a relationship consistently costs you your peace, the price is just too high.
That is such a vital point, and it leads perfectly into another really important distinction the source makes, telling the difference between a relationship that's just difficult and one that's truly toxic. Because, let's face it, no relationship is perfect, right? Not every difficult relationship is toxic, it says, and all relationships go through struggles. This is important, I think, so we don't just slap the toxic label on every argument or rough patch. Healthy relationships have conflict too. But it looks different.
It looks very different. And the source gives us a really clear way to tell them apart. It's essential for figuring out what you're actually dealing with. In healthy relationships, it says, problems are faced together. There is listening. There is change. There is growth. See the key words there. Together, listening, change, growth. It implies teamwork. Both people trying. Both people willing to communicate openly, to really hear the other person, and crucially, to adapt their behavior based on that understanding. There's a sense of partnership in tackling problems. Both people care about the relationship's health and each other's feelings. Conflict, in the healthy context, can actually be a chance to understand each other better, to grow closer, not just a cycle of blame. Now contrast that with the toxic dynamic. The source says there, it's always you doing the work, always you bending, sacrificing, losing yourself. That is the core difference, that profound imbalance. It's where one person is constantly making the effort, constantly accommodating, compromising their own needs, maybe even their values, always giving in, while the other person, they stay stuck. They're demanding, maybe defensive,
Unwilling to really engage, unwilling to change. Maybe they even sabotage your efforts to fix things. It creates this constant state of emotional labor for you, and yet leads to profound personal loss over time. It forces you to really think. Am I investing in this relationship, or am I just sacrificing myself for it? Is this a partnership, or am I just constantly propping something up all by myself? Are we building something together, or am I alone trying to patch up holes in a sinking ship?
And the result of staying in that kind of one-sided dynamic, the source paints a really stark, quite devastating picture of the consequences. It says over time, that's what happens. You lose yourself. And that's not just melodrama, is it? It feels like a literal description for many people, an erasure of who you are. You forget how to laugh freely. Remember that. That easy, unburdened joy, it just fades. You stop dreaming. Your own hopes, your ambitions, they just get pushed aside, replaced by this feeling of being stuck, maybe even suffocated. And you start living in reaction to the other person. Their moods, their fears, their anger. It becomes this state of constant high alert, always watching them, trying to predict them, trying to manage them, trying to avoid setting them off. It's like your whole emotional world starts revolving around their chaos, not your own center.
It is a profound psychological consequence. It really is. It's not just about feeling down for a bit. It's an active erasure of your identity, your agency, your capacity for joy. When you lose yourself like that, you lose your connection to your own internal compass, your sense of autonomy, your essence. Things like spontaneous laughter or dreaming about the future, these are fundamental signs of personal freedom, creativity, hope, and they wither. Because all your energy, your mental and emotional bandwidth, it gets completely consumed by managing the other person's instability. You're so focused on navigating their moods, predicting reactions, avoiding conflict, that there's just no space left for your own life, your own passions, your own simple pleasures. And that state of living in reaction, it means you're constantly hypervigilant. Your nervous system is always on edge. Your emotional balance is completely tied to someone else's unpredictable state. Your center of gravity shifts entirely. It's no longer rooted inside you. It's tied to them. You're always watching, bracing, trying desperately to control something that is ultimately uncontrollable. And in that process, you give up control of your own inner life. If you connect that to the bigger picture, it just highlights how crucial self-preservation is. Not just for happiness, but for your basic ability to grow, to be independent, to even be yourself. It's a real warning of the slow, quiet death of your spirit when you're trapped like that. Your sense of worth gets tangled up entirely with their approval or their moods.
So, okay, if someone recognizes these patterns, if they feel that sense of losing themselves, understand the cost. How do you even begin to turn that ship around? How do you start healing? The source is clear. It takes time. Healing isn't instant, is it? It's not flipping a switch. It's a journey. And it demands courage. Real courage. The courage to set boundaries, maybe for the very first time in that relationship. The courage to just say no clearly, without apologies or long explanations. To stop explaining yourself over and over again. Stop justifying why you feel a certain way or why you need something. And maybe the hardest but most powerful, to choose silence sometimes instead of getting sucked into the constant chaos. Refusing to engage in those circular arguments that go nowhere and just drain you more. Those steps sound simple maybe, but they feel huge when you've been living in that reactive mode for so long. When your whole way of being has been about managing someone else.
They're huge steps. But they are incredibly powerful because they represent reclaiming your personal agency, taking back the wheel. Boundaries, like the source suggests, they aren't about punishing the other person. They're not about building walls to keep everyone out. They're about protecting you, defining where you end and they begin, saying, this is what's okay with me and this is not. It's a statement of your own worth. Saying no, that's asserting your right to choose, your autonomy. It's saying my needs, my time, my energy, they matter. And they're not limitless resources for you to deplete.
And stopping the endless explaining, that's refusing to play the game anymore. Refusing to get stuck in those cycles where you're constantly seeking their validation or trying to justify yourself, which just keeps you hooked in and wears you down. It's recognizing you don't actually owe anyone a 5-page essay explaining why you need peace or why you're setting a limit, and choosing silence over chaos. Wow. That's profound self-respect. It's refusing to pour your precious energy into destructive fights or manipulative games that only feed the toxicity.
It's understanding that sometimes the strongest move is to simply disengage, to withdraw your energy from a battle you can't win, and that only hurts you. These steps, yeah, they're tough, but they are the active work of recovery. They're about rebuilding that internal space that got taken over by the toxic dynamic. This is where the real healing starts, not in trying to fix them, but in diligently, carefully rebuilding yourself. It's asserting your value, and that becomes the foundation for everything else.
And right alongside that courage, the source highlights something equally vital: self-compassion. Because it's so easy to beat yourself up, isn't it? You look back and think, why did I stay so long? Why didn't I see the signs sooner? Why did I put up with that? We can be so hard on ourselves, fall into that trap of self-blame, much harder than we'd ever be on a friend going through the same thing. But the source gives this incredibly kind, understanding perspective, a real lifeline. But remember, you stayed because you cared, because you hoped. That doesn't make you weak. It makes you human.
That reframing is absolutely crucial. It helps us challenge that harsh self-judgment. It puts the act of staying into a different context. It wasn't weakness. It was likely driven by really positive human qualities. Your ability to care deeply, your loyalty, your hope, maybe your optimism. It's so important to try and internalize that. Staying was often an act of love. Even if that love wasn't reciprocated healthily, it was an act of hoping for the best, maybe seeing the good in someone, believing change was possible, and letting go of that self-blame. It's a non-negotiable step in healing because it frees up so much emotional energy. Energy that was being wasted on regret and self-criticism can now be channeled into recovery, into rebuilding, into creating a future that prioritizes your well-being. You can forgive yourself. Forgive yourself for not knowing then what you know now. Forgive yourself for hoping. Forgive yourself for believing. That forgiveness, that self-compassion, is the bedrock you build on moving forward. Shifting from punishing yourself internally to nurturing yourself with kindness. From criticism to acceptance.
So, okay, you start the healing, you find the courage, you practice self-compassion. How do you actually begin again? How do you rebuild? The source talks about this beautiful idea of coming home to yourself. And it starts with being really intentional about who you surround yourself with. It says, surround yourself with people who see you clearly, who listen without controlling, who lift you instead of draining you. Wow, what a difference that sounds like compared to the toxic dynamic, right? Actively choosing people who nourish you, not deplete you, people who see your worth, not undermine it. It's like consciously deciding to replant yourself in rich, fertile soil after being stuck in dry, barren ground for too long.
Oh, it's absolutely essential. You cannot overestimate the importance of a supportive environment during recovery. Those new connections, the healthy ones, they act like a mirror, reflecting back your true value instead of the distorted image you saw in a toxic relationship. They provide the emotional safety, the resources you need to rebuild your confidence, to learn to trust again both others and yourself. They offer a safe space to practice those new skills, like setting boundaries or expressing your needs, and actually experiencing what it feels like to have them met, to have that reciprocity. So consciously choosing your circle, it literally changes your environment from one that harmed you to one that helps you heal and grow. It helps you relearn what healthy connection actually looks and feels like. You heal within the embrace of genuine support. And it raises a really good question for all us, doesn't it? How does consciously choosing our relationships, the people we let close, how does that directly build our long-term emotional resilience, our overall well-being? It's an active process, choosing people who add positively to your story, who celebrate you, who stand by you with empathy, not judgment.
And while you're rebuilding, surrounded by better support, there's this incredibly validating and powerful message from the source. It says, you're not hard to love. You were just loving someone who didn't know how to receive it or return it. Just hearing that, it lifts such a weight, doesn't it? It shifts the perceived fault away from the person who was hurt and onto the dynamic itself, onto the other person's limitations. That feels incredibly liberating. It just reframes everything, helps strip away that self-doubt and replace it with, okay, it wasn't me, it was the situation.
It is profoundly liberating. And internalizing that truth, that's key to real self-reclamation. Because so often, after a toxic relationship, the person carries this belief that they are the problem, that they're somehow flawed, unlovable, that they did something wrong to deserve it, or that they keep attracting it. They ask themselves, what's wrong with me? Why can't I make relationships work? This statement just completely dismantles that harmful self-blame. It reassures you. Your capacity to love, your inherent lovability, was never the issue. The issue was the other person's inability, their incapacity to receive that love healthfully, to reciprocate it, to respect your needs, to engage in a balanced way. Their failure to show up healthily in the relationship reflects their internal state, their wounds, their limitations. It is absolutely not a measure of your worth. Understanding that is crucial for untangling your identity from that painful past, for embracing who you are now. It helps you see that you offered something valuable, your love, your care, to someone who just couldn't recognize its value or couldn't return it in kind. And that's on them, not you.
And that brings us to the final point, the ultimate meaning behind this whole difficult journey of letting go and healing. It's about redefining what letting go even means. The Course puts it so powerfully. Letting go doesn't mean hate. It means choosing peace. It means choosing life. your life. So it's not about anger or revenge or bitterness necessarily. It's not about slamming the door in hatred. It's presented as an act of profound self-preservation. Self-love, really, a strategic choice to redirect your energy, your life force back towards yourself and your own well-being.
Exactly. If we connect this to the bigger picture, letting go isn't an ending in a negative sense. It's a powerful, courageous beginning. It's an active choice. You're consciously choosing to prioritize your peace, your autonomy, your future over staying stuck in dysfunction or reactivity. It truly is the ultimate act of self-reclamation. You're asserting your fundamental right to your own emotional well-being, your own life path, free from the shadow of that toxicity. It's recognizing that real freedom isn't found in stubbornly clinging to something that consistently hurts you, but in the strength it takes to release it. And that release, it creates the space for you to step back into who you really are, to find your laughter again, your dreams again, and eventually to build truly healthy, reciprocal, nurturing connections. It transforms what felt like a devastating loss into the most important gain of all, coming back home to your authentic self.
So thinking about all this, what does it mean for you, our listener? It suggests that even the most painful goodbyes, the separations that feel like they'll break you, they can actually be the most profound hellos, a hello back to yourself. The source leaves us with that really beautiful, hopeful thought, a comfort and a guidepost. And maybe someday when you look back, you'll realize that walking away wasn't the end of the story. It was the beginning of you coming home to yourself.
It's such a powerful image, isn't it? That transformation. What looks like loss becomes the ultimate gain, reclaiming your true self, your authentic core. This whole process isn't just about escaping something bad. It's about actively building something good. A life filled with peace, respect, genuine connection, and self-love. So maybe the important question to leave you with as you reflect on all this is, what does coming home to yourself actually look like for you? Your unique life with your experiences? And what steps, even tiny ones, can you perhaps take starting right now, today, to begin that incredibly important journey back to your most authentic, peaceful self?